Greetings from Geneva, and I'm very honored to be part of this important conference. And first I want to congratulate you for the theme, because a new beginning, let's do it different, is exactly what the Forum is trying to do with its Great Reset initiatives. So I will talk a little bit more about this Great Reset initiative. And in the second part, I will shortly address the issue of capitalism. What kind of capitalism do we need today? And finally, I would like to share with you my ideas about leadership, particularly leadership in this COVID era. Of course, we are still all fighting the virus in Europe. We have a second wave. I know in Peru, you are one of the most hit countries, but we should not only think in terms of recovery, reconstruction, but I think it's also already the moment to think about the Great Reset, to think about a new beginning. And here we have to reflect on what can we do better in the future, what do we have to repair, what do we have really to change? Now, the old system, which some people call neoliberal capitalism, we know did not fulfill all its promises. It contributed substantially during the last decades to lift out people from poverty, and I think Peru has done a particularly great job before COVID hit to reduce the poverty in its country. So we know now, and we have certain doubts about how much this system, if we live it in its old traditional form, how much is it really addressing the issue of inclusion? And I should add, how much is it in addressing really the issue of sustainability? So the Great Reset initiative, or the new beginning, should have in principle three objectives: to make our world more resilient, because we can assume that the COVID-19 pandemic is not the only black swan which will visit the world. There are other black swans already around the corner. I would say a major global cyber attack, the environmental climate change. So the Great Reset should address those deficiencies of the system which we had, and should define a new system. And here I see particularly two challenges also. The first one is the question of employment. We have seen that COVID has put out of work millions of people around the world, but it's not only COVID which has had such an impact on the employment conditions, on the livelihoods of so many people. It's also the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution, which I described first in the book 4 years ago, has a long-lasting and deep, I would say, disruptive impact on economies, societies, and our lives. So when we look at this notion, or at this evolution of new technologies, and many of those technologies which I described in my book 4 years ago were considered to be science fiction, and they have become today so much reality, of course also driven by COVID, like digitalization, like what we see in genetics to develop treatments, to develop vaccines, and so on. But the good news is, according to a research which we presented last week, at our job reset summit, at the end, there will be more jobs created by the fourth industrial revolution than destroyed. The problem is that the skills which will be needed tomorrow are different from the skills today. So one of the big tasks of business leadership today is to upskill and reskill the people to make them fit for the jobs of tomorrow. We have made a survey and looked at what actually the jobs for the future should be. And if you are more interested, you can go to our website and you can load down the future jobs report. But I think the skills which we need are quite obvious. We need the capability of system leadership. We need the capability of permanent learning. We need emotional intelligence, and so on. And without creating the skills, we will not be long-term able to create decent jobs. And without decent jobs, we will not have an inclusive, fair society. I would like to draw your attention also to the issue of education. If we want to compete in a world where the most important competitive factor is the capability to innovate, the capability to be creative and so on, we have to teach those capabilities from the youngest age on. So if people ask me, what do you see as the big revolution which are needed for tomorrow? I would say the revolution of our educational system. Now, let me talk about the capitalism which we need. When we talk about capitalism, which actually is an ideology which was created after the first industrial revolution, when we talk now about capitalism, we have to enlarge the definition. And we should not just think of the financial capital or money or the material side. We also have to include today in the definition of capital natural capital, social capital, human capital. So one of the big initiatives the World Economic Forum has undertaken is the development of a metric systems which allows corporations to measure not only how successful they are in terms of using financial capital, but also what is their track record related to the human, the social, and nature capital. If we talk about stakeholder capitalism, I'm thinking back 50 years ago when I created the World Economic Forum, and I was actually writing a book on stakeholder capitalism. But what happened afterwards was that at the same time in 1970, Milton Friedman wrote his book on shareholder capitalism. Business, the business of business is business, which means business was defined just in economic terms. And we forgot that business is not only an economic entity, but a social organism. Today, and particularly COVID has shown us that those companies which invested not only in making, let's say, the shareholders short-term as happy as possible, but who took also care of their people, who invested into the long-term viability of the company, have performed much better. So what we need is a comprehensive ESG, environmental, social, good governance measurement system, which we apply and where we integrate metrics, measurable metrics, into our annual reports. The forum has always further developed the stakeholder concept, and we published on the occasion of the annual meeting this year a revised manifesto of stakeholder obligations. And now we are walking the talk, and our International Business Council, which comprises under the chairmanship of Brian Moynihan, the CEO of the Bank of America, over 100 of the leading companies in the world, has come together to develop a system of criteria, of metrics, which can be applied around the world and which provides an opportunity to measure and to compare companies. We are really living now at the turning point from shareholder capitalism orientation to short-term profits to stakeholder capitalism. And the metrics are the means to walk the talk. So I would like to draw your attention, the attention of the Peruvian business community to those metrics, and I hope that you will become early adopters of the system which measures prosperity, which means also economic progress, but it measures at the same time how much we serve people, how much we serve the planet, and how much we apply good principles for good governance. Let me conclude with sharing with you some ideas about the leadership qualities for the post-COVID era. Of course, I have been, in addition to my role at the World Economic Forum and in other functions, I have been a professor for leadership issues here at the University of Geneva, and I have met practically every leader around the world. So for me, what makes really a leader was always a very fascinating question. And I would say what is very important is to start with is to define leadership not just in technical terms, what methods you have applied and so on. No, much more in human terms. We are not technocrats, we are, if I may say so, humanocrats. So let me propose to you a very simple system with 5 elements. It's brains, it's soul, it's heart, it's muscles, and it's nerves. So you will ask me, what does it mean? Now, a good leader, of course, is a professional. He has brains, and we don't have to discuss it. But a good leader has to have also a soul, which means he has to have a compass. He has to know in which direction he goes. And he has to have values. Today, in a world where you have to change, where you have to be agile at a maximum, where you have to ask your employees continuously to adapt, people want to know what is actually your compass, what is the base for your decisions. So the soul is important in order to make you trustworthy. And trust is the most precious capital we can have. We need the heart. We need to have the passion about what we are doing. And I know you are entrepreneurs. I'm in some way a social entrepreneur. And particularly now with the COVID, it's very important that we show our passion and compassion. I know it's not easy. We miss the contact with the people, but there are many other ways to show that we are passionate about what we are doing and see that we are compassionate related to the people who interact with us and for whom we have responsibility. And finally, the muscles. It's very important not only to have a vision, to be a great professional, but to translate into action what we are doing. And the good nerves, particularly now again during Corona times, there are so many unforeseen developments. We have to adapt, we have to be flexible, we have to be agile. So it requires good nerves and it requires resilience. So I wish you all brains, soul, heart, muscles, and good nerves. Thank you.